Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to the Witching Half Hour or so. I'm so glad you've joined us today, whatever it is you're doing as you listen. And I have got a very special guest with me, Katherine Gillett. She is an astral traveler. And I feel like more than just an astral traveler, you are almost an expert navigator of the astral world. And what I think is so beautiful about her perspective is she comes from it from a place without spiritual dogma. So she brings a really refreshing perspective on a lot of the topics that we talk about in our circles, that we learn about between meditation and the astral plane and journeying and traveling. So I'm so excited to have her here today. Welcome, Katherine.
Thank you so much. And you're too kind. I'm really pleased and honored to be here and glad to share with everybody.
So to start it off, why don't you tell us how this started, a little bit about your spiritual journey and how you got here?
Well, I mean, I was raised as just a middle class Western American chick in a family that was largely agnostic, didn't come from any spiritual tradition. They were mostly into, science and all of that type of thing. I happened to, when I was about 12 years old, wander into the metaphysical section of the public library and check out a book that it was about soul travel or astral projection. It was called Soul Travel. But really, what it detailed in it was a meditative practice, similar to the meditative practices you can find just about anywhere nowadays. And for whatever reason, I thought that sounded like a fun hobby to take up as a 12-year-old.
It must have been your path that you were supposed to be on. That's what
I've considered that it was a guided, it was time for me to start on my path. And so I ended up wandering down and picking up the title that I needed to get me jump started on what was going to be a very a very interesting unfolding. And I started being able to feel energy, move energy, summon more energy into me, all of these types of things. And I got my first, I always called it getting the knowing. Like, I think today they call it getting a download, but in those days, like I said, we weren't downloading anything.
downloading didn't exist.
So I always just called it getting the knowing. And it said, you're not really in to begin with, or something along those lines. And it wasn't long after that that I started at random being able to astral project, get out of my body. Once the knowing hit that I wasn't really trapped, it's not a jam jar. I'm not trapped inside my body to begin with. I was unstable at it. I didn't have very good control, but I thought it was cool.
Well, and you were a child. I find this so interesting, and I love this about your story is how you come to this idea of astral travel. You'd mentioned that you didn't have a lot of religious indoctrination
Mhm.
as a kid. So you have this like openness where I'll get you to explain. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Reading, it sounded like there was no shame attached. There was no I'm weird attached to this. It was just like, huh, this is cool.
Yeah, I was raised by an agnostic father. And so to me, the whole thing was more, at least initially, was more like an interesting science experiment. If I do these practices, what results do I get? And definitely the results were interesting and exciting enough for me to continue practicing it and doing it. And I had the thought, my first interaction with magic rituals, and I thought, if this is real, if I can get out of my body, I wonder what else is real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm back to the library. And so I checked out what just a book that looked interesting to me. I was maybe 13 at this point, and it was like ancient Gaelic rites. And of course, to me, the first thing I wanted to try that sounds super cool was summoning fairies. Yeah. So right out the gate, the first thing I decide I'm going to do is a summoning, which I don't recommend if you're not well practiced at what you're doing.
Especially calling forward tricksters. We're shown one image of fairies via Disney.
Mhm.
The reality of the Fae realm is very different. It's much more Shakespearean than it is Disney, I would say.
Yeah, it turns out Disney lied to me about more than just Prince Charming. Because all I knew really was the energy feeling from meditation, how to gather up and compress that energy. And I don't know why, but I decided to compress the biggest ball of energy I could and just like put it into the words I was saying. And nothing happened, or at least I thought nothing happened. So I was, as a kid, I was like, "Oh, whatever, this sucks," and just sort of left it like that. Um, you're already giggling because you already know it was
Yeah,
not a cool deal.
just leave a portal wide open, baby.
Wide open.
Wide
And
open.
I had no idea that's what I had done.
How could you though?
No, yeah, it doesn't. I mean, it's just an old book of Gaelic rights. It doesn't come with an actual warning like, "Hey, maybe don't do this." And that night, I ended up absolutely, because I was already used to astral travel, I ended up absolutely flung out of my body clear across the room. And sitting on my bed was this hovering dark shadow of an entity in my room.
Mhm.
And I was absolutely terrified.
And you're just 13.
Mhm.
You're just 13.
Yeah. I had very little control over the abilities that I had already developed, much less a new sort of like portal in my own mind or my own energy that I had opened up. I mean, it would happen 5, 6, 7 times a night that I was flung out of my body. There was another entity in the room. I would try to flee only to wind up back in my body, only to wind up immediately back out again. And the whole thing became terrifying. I was losing sleep. I didn't want to get up and go to school in the morning. Eventually, I had to confess to my mom what I'd been doing in my room. You don't like to do that as a teenager, but
Yeah.
it got to the point where she was finding me sleeping on the couch in the living room and not wanting to get up for school because I was literally not sleeping at all. There was no religious tradition in the house, nothing to base anything on.
Did she believe you? How did she take this as an agnostic parent?
Well, my mom fortunately I was blessed. She was understanding enough not to one tell my dad, because my dad would have had me down at the doctor's office having somebody go, "Oh yeah, that sounds like high functioning schizophrenia." You know what I mean? And I the last thing she wanted was to go have me diagnosed. So she was open-minded enough not to go that route. She wasn't a religious person to begin with, but, like, she had seen The Exorcist, she didn't want the young priest and the old priest in the situation, that just escalates the situation. She had enough innate spiritual wisdom to know that having some sort of confrontational religious situation happening was probably not going to be the right energy situation for what was going on.
Yeah.
So I feel really blessed that she was able to do that. And we tried, she looked up the local psychic church. She called in like tarot readers, anybody she could find. One lady who came in, all she could tell me was that she couldn't move it, whatever it was. Which I'm assuming nowadays, I'm assuming this was Reiki, somebody who was trying to move the energy off of me and couldn't. There was something that was stuck. So now I know enough to know that she was
Yeah.
probably a Reiki healer, but whatever it was, she couldn't move it off of me.
Well, and it's so interesting because sitting here in this Zoom call with you, it's really easy for us to really get into our analytical minds about it. but to remember that you are a child.
Mhm.
And the other piece is it'd be really hard to remove something that you actively summoned.
Yeah.
It's doing as it was told,
Yes, I invited it, and I didn't know that I had invited
but
it.
it's from the Fey realm, so it doesn't care that you don't know.
Yeah, yeah. No, it literally once I got to the point where I was shouting, "What are you? What do you want?" It actually told me its name and said, "You're mine."
That's a bit chilling, love.
It is. It was terrifying, especially at that age with 0 experience. I mean, the whole thing was new to me.
Well, and I astral traveled spontaneously as a teen. Like you, my family, well, my family was spiritual and my dad is
Mhm.
Catholic, so I was raised in a Catholic environment, but not very strict. So I fell in love with ritual because they weren't strict with their Catholicism. They were very very chill about it. But I astral traveled spontaneously as a teenager as like my hormones turned on as I went through the development as your frontal lobe starts expanding, right? So I can so relate to that idea of like, oh
Mhm.
my God, I'm walking around my house and hear a phone ring. So I walk back to my body and I wake up and putting it all together. It's very,
Mhm.
and I have kids who astral travel spontaneously, but I'm a trained priestess and witch with deep shamanic background, and they've been raised in this environment. So I just have so much empathy for where you were in that moment.
Yeah, we were a little helpless, honestly, in knowing what to do about it, and it turned out to have other consequences. As I was astral traveling and being used to sensing whatever this energy was in my room, I became hypersensitive to the presence of other energies, and I ended up also my my dreams began to change to where I would sense when there was another personality in my dream state and would be like, "You're not the person you look like. What who are you?" So, personalities began to talk to me in other states of consciousness. I didn't realize that the astral travel, like what I thought was dreaming, was shifting into astral travel, and I was ending up interacting with other types of entities and personalities via that route as well.
Okay, I'm going to pause you. This is just such a beautiful story, and you're so good at your flow. My gosh, because
Mhm.
I'm going to pause you for everyone in the Earbud Coven. Can you just take a minute to define, since you're so gifted at astral travel, the difference between astral travel,
Mhm.
dream state, and the state we're in, let's say, like a guided meditation? To the best of your ability. Like, I'm not going to hold you, like, as you understand it.
No, no, no. That's completely okay. And again, like I'm still like largely unindoctrinated in any kind of tradition. So really, really, you're just getting my viewpoint. But in my experience, the only difference to any of that is the way that you have your own consciousness focused. So it has to do with the density of your own energy. When we're focused here in physical reality, it's a hyper focus point that is a super dense energy that is very linear in nature. As we begin to disseminate, if you move into an astral state in the physical world, that usually astral travel is you're out of your body, but still in the physical, you're experiencing the physical world, but you're experiencing it vibrationally. So you may get this sensitive humming feeling where you can kind of feel the air because you're in a more disseminated state of consciousness. And as that begins to disseminate further, get less and less dense, moving into other spheres of reality, reality becomes more shapeable to your own law of attraction. So, in a dream state, the only real difference is your degree of awareness of it. Usually, when we're in a dream state, we're operating from a more subconscious self. Like, you're not the same self in a dream that you are when you're awake. I think most people, like, you're a little less inhibited, or you might do things that you didn't wouldn't normally do in an awake state, and that's we've shifted into a portion of self that's a little bit deeper and a little more subconscious in order to give ourselves the ability to work with and play in a reality state that's more malleable. And the only real difference is bringing the waking ego consciousness, the human focus point,
Mhm.
closer and closer to that subconscious self point. When you start bringing the human waking ego is a little bit more rigid, it's not as flexible, it has a little bit more to fear and worry about in its own stability. There's we face dangers in physical reality. And you become more flexible the closer and closer you get to that subconscious state. So a state of meditation is us intentionally bringing that waking ego personality closer to a more flexible subconscious state, a more disseminated state. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And I love that you're using the word disseminated,
Mhm.
because I feel like that is language that's it's easily transferred across different doctrines,
Mhm.
right? There are so many different beautiful, nuanced teachings in modern paganism that draw from many different cultures. And it's my opinion that they often take very similar states of consciousness and call them very different things.
Mhm.
And I love that visualization of disseminating and the way you talk about the ego and whether or not your conscious mind or your consciousness focus is there, right? Like when you're dreaming, I hear you say it's more subconscious. Your conscious ego, your conscious focus isn't quite there.
Mhm.
And then when you're astral traveling, what I'm hearing you say is like, it's you. It's not your dream self. It's you, the you that is at the driver's seat all the time, but you're unconcentrating your energetic field so that you're not as rigidly defined by our physical world,
Mhm.
like gravity and atoms, and then you can bend and shift them more.
Mhm.
I see you nodding, so I think we're picking up what you're laying down. I love this because I can really feel it when you're talking about it. I have a background in shamanic work, so we do a lot of journeying. And sometimes in those journeys, you are very much conscious of what you're doing and where you're going. And it's very, there's a directive, right? I'm
Mhm.
going to the spirit realm to do or accomplish something.
Mhm.
It's usually associated with healing. But other times, I open up to my guides because I'm seeking and I'm still in control because I'm trained, but I'm not guiding it with my ego. I'm open to the guidance. So I can see that in what you're saying.
Yeah, there's an ego flexibility that you get closer and closer to the deeper in that you get. It allows you to be pulled to wherever it is you need to go or whatever the calling is. As I started interacting with the other personalities that I came across, I was really blessed. I learned a lot. And I mean, I would be fascinated to know more about shamanic practices because again, like I'm almost completely unindoctrinated. Everything I learned from the personalities I found on the other side. But they started to teach me things like any of the mirrors or windows or portals. And so what I found is as visions were popping up around me, I could will myself into varying states of reality or into different situations. What I found was myself in different people's energy fields. And over time I was taught to help people cross over, so to act as, I guess, like a grim reaper, not grim, but as a psychopomp, like being on the other side as humans were transitioning back to non-physical reality to help get them reacclimated to the broader perspective, that disseminated state. There's cases where people just need a little bit of help understanding what's taken place,
Yes.
especially if it's been a swift transition or an unexpected transition. There's sort of a reacclimation period. Yeah, it's almost like deep sea diving. It's like we've been at the bottom of the ocean where the pressure and the energy is so compressed that it creates this physical environment. But as we transition back to non-physical, it's like needing to bring people up slowly so that they can reacclimate or redisseminate to a lighter pressure state and reintegrate broader perspective.
You know, my brain is, because I've done psychopomp work,
Oh.
so my brain is taking this vision you're giving me, and I can totally see that when you are dealing with a person who has not been able to cross with grace for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
They get stuck, they are confused, they are scared.
Mm-hmm.
I love this new image you've given me, and I'm gonna laugh, of a soul getting like this spiritual bends because they've come up too fast from being in a high pressure state to a lower pressure state. It's such an understandable way of talking about it, because so many times when I've done that work, when I'm clearing homes or clearing houses, or after tragedy, when earthquake or big things where lots of people have crossed suddenly traumatically, they're not angry like our TV shows say. They're not like harmful like our TV shows say. They're confused and they're lost and they're not quite computing what's going on, and they need a little bit of love and compassion and help. And I love that vision of spiritual bends, like they just came up too fast.
Yeah, absolutely. When I come across it, it's usually either that something happened so fast that they didn't have the time to process what had actually happened, or it happened in a situation where they're still so focused on the situation, like the energy was just so intense that they immediately upon coming in have recreated the scenario that they were in, and they're still trying to deal with whatever was happening at the moment.
Which is such a human thing.
Absolutely.
We create all kinds of trauma in our lives as we try to process it emotionally, right? Like
Mhm.
that's often what really garbage relationships and toxic relationships that we repeat are all about. We're trying to process the confusion, the misunderstanding, what we're not figuring out. So it's interesting the way you say that, how even upon our shift from this world to the next, we still have such a human aspect.
Yeah, because it takes it takes some adjustment to reimagine. We're so used to thinking of self as this singular focus point we are when we're human, the waking ego consciousness that we are operating in physical reality. That as you begin to shift back into broader perspective, it takes a moment to reintegrate that self is it's so much more than what you're used to experiencing. You start to be able to, I mean, for many people, like you start to reintegrate all of your empathic abilities. You can sense the other personalities around you in non-physical. Everything you need to know about that entity or that personality is immediately communicated when they enter your space. All of your psychic abilities reawaken when you cross over, and so it becomes a little bit destabilizing for people. It takes a minute to get used to the fact that I've literally had like I had one guy who was like, I was just that person on there. And I was like, uh-huh. And he was like, but now I'm this. And I said, that's right. Yeah, that's right. He was like, weird. And I was like, it is. It's okay, because you start to reintegrate so much of the rest of the whole experience of self is so much bigger than just what we're experiencing while we're here and awake on earth. So it's been a it's been a really interesting journey, but all happening in the times before the internet. So I had to sort of come up with my own language for describing it and my own way of understanding it.
We are going in these beautiful circles that we do when we talk. Going to find our way back to our story. So we have you as a teen, a young teen,
Mhm.
and you're learning from this Celtic entity that you
Mhm.
summoned, not intentionally, like just through curiosity, through this book. You'd been losing sleep. your mom has been reaching out to a community she knows nothing about because she's not a new age witchy chick. She is a mom following her intuition, doing the best she can, and you're learning how to navigate the astral plane by yourself.
Yeah, there was no way to turn it off once it was on.
Yeah.
A lot of other things started over time. The clairaudience began. I would hear voices, the claircognizance, clairvoyance. I would be sitting on the couch and suddenly brought into a situation with a spirit where one minute I'm here and the next minute I am lying on the floor in a hotel, and I can tell she's already dead, but that's her perspective. I can smell the 1974 on the in the room.
So you astral traveled to a
Right.
scenario.
Mm-hmm. At that, she was done. She couldn't let go of the scenario because she was very much afraid for her friend or her sister, whoever had been with her. So it's again, it's one of those reasons why people kind of get stuck in transition. If there is something traumatic that happens in the scenario when it happened, they're still very much focused on trying to deal with the situation, trying to help somebody else that was there. And so and it was very disorienting at first because I didn't understand why I'm seeing these. You know, as a young person, I don't understand why I'm seeing these
Yeah.
things. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. It took a lot of years to figure out why these situations were being brought to me and how to deal with them, how to help in those scenarios.
God, how old were you when you saw
I
that?
don't know, that might have been later teens or early 20s when things like that started taking place.
Because I know I shut down a lot. Like when my Claire audience turned on, I was terrified for years. And then finally, someone who loves me very much said, look, you've been to enough therapists. Like you're clearly psychic. If you were schizophrenic, they would have found it by now. Like we all know you can read, we all know you can see.
Yeah. It was frightening for a long time for me. It was upsetting for a long time for me. There was a lot of things I had to learn in the process in order to be able to function properly in non-physical spaces. One of the hardest ones was to let go of the fear. I was trained to get through the fear and let it go and realize there was nothing for me to be afraid of.
Okay, so your fear or the fear of the spirits that you come across who are trapped, not trapped, but are stuck, or both.
My fear in this situation. In a non physical space, law of attraction happens immediately. You're creating and adding energy to the situation. So, as long as I'm adding fear to the situation, I'm not capable of helping properly. I had to learn how to radiate peace and love and calm, that same feeling that you get from your angels and guides when you're interacting with them. I had to learn how to make that my vibration when I step into a situation, no matter how frightening the situation is or how frightened the personality, the soul in the situation. I needed to be able to act from the standpoint of angels and guides to be able to radiate that love and safety and peace. I needed to be able to step in and change the environment, just like you would in a lucid dream. Like, no, we're going to calm these waters. We're going to change this shag carpet into grass in a field. And you're suddenly going to smell the flowers and the warm sunlight because you're not here anymore. But in order to be able to do that, I've got to be able to have calm and control over the situation to sort of wrestle the energy away from the person creating the scenario around themselves by giving them that love and peace and calm, bringing it back down. In order to really cross over, they've got to bring their vibration up to the frequency where they can hear it. Like if I can get them to come bring their vibration back up to that frequency, then their angels and guides can take over from there. They just end up in this low frequency trapped in a loop where they can't hear the angels and guides. They can't hear it being called to them. So my job is to act as that interim to be able to bring their vibration back up to peace and love and calm, change the scenario for them so that they can reconnect and hear and be taken from there.
That's so beautiful. So when I trained to do psychopomp work, that was what we trained on. Being that container, holding that space, not absorbing whatever trauma, whatever scene, whatever emotion, being absolutely, let me find the right word, completely non-judgmental. Like that anger, if you're dealing with a soul who's in a space of anger because they're mad that they've crossed, or they're angry that someone they love is being hurt and they are incapable of helping,
Mm-hmm.
or just anger out of confusion and feeling helpless. So sometimes humans who feel helpless, they create anger because it makes us feel empowered, it emboldens us on this realm, it triggers our adrenaline so we can feel emboldened from anger.
Mm-hmm.
So to take all whatever that soul is feeling non-judgmentally, just hold the space and then connect with a person, the energy, the light inside that, no matter what it is.
I know exactly what you mean because it does sound strange to say that you have to disassociate or disconnect, because entering into the situation with a strong sense of empathy will only add your sorrow or your pity to the vibration.
Exactly.
And you can't do that. You have to be able to look at it with the eyes of broader perspective, with the eyes of the angels and guides. Everything
Mhm.
that happens on this plane is valid, regardless of what it is. Whether it's your happiness and joy, whether it's your pain and sorrow, whether it's the tears that you've gone through, everything that you experience is beautiful and valid from their perspective. It's being able to look at things from that perspective instead of from your human perspective, because the tendency is to add your sympathy or empathy to their situation. But to shift the vibration to that higher frequency, there is almost a disconnection from it or a disassociation.
And my empathy or my sympathy is also colored by my life experience, by my own baggage. So I have to be able to move that aside when I'm doing really high vibrational work like this. I've done work as well, and I'm interested to see your perspective on it
Mhm,
because I've done work where I'm removing a quote unquote negative entity, right?
mhm.
And one of the things I was taught is there are many realms in this world. There are realms of light and beauty. There are realms of pure love. There's realms that are not pure love, and everything has its place. So I was taught, instead of being very, like you had mentioned, like a confrontational, religious, good priest, old priest from The Exorcist,
Yeah.
just compassionately, like, there's a better place for you to be. This is not the realm you're from. This realm does not feed you the way you need to be fed. There is somewhere better for you to go. Let's take you there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like I don't come from any kind of tradition or anything, so the way that I interpret that is I have come across personality constructs that are not arranged in the way that we would expect or that we're used to a human construct being arranged. So some of them, when you come across them, will feel very much what we interpret as negative or heavy. And that's because we work on a very emotional, empathic sort of a construct. Like the existence is vast and infinite. There are realms or dimensions, however you want to say it, where personalities are not at all constructed in the same way that the human consciousness is constructed, because their experience, their density, their realm is not set up the way that ours is. It's the communication structure is not emotionally based. It's not even physically based in a lot of cases. It's possible to come up against things that, one, don't emanate any kind of emotion or feeling, which feels like uncanny valley to us. It feels like a dead soul, and that's scary. And also, they have no concept of physical pain or fear, or they don't understand why you're scared or why you're upset. because their experience is very, very different from what our experience here is. So they're also being confronted with emotions and things that they don't understand. Why are you afraid? What is this energy that feels super intense that's coming at me? So there's a lot of misunderstanding that happens. There really are no boundaries, just limiting beliefs. So it's possible entirely for, different personality constructs to come in contact with one another and bleed through in between different dimensions. But we do, when we come across something that feels emotionless and not understanding why we're afraid, it translates to our experience as something evil or frightening or negative. But in my experience, that's usually not the case. Rare to come across something that actually intends harm in the way that we think of it. Can come across as parasitic feeling, as if they're trying to poke you in order to get that response. So that feeling of it, it's like a parasitic feeling, like,
Yeah.
why is it trying to draw my energy like that?
Mhm.
Why does it want this negative energy? And again, it's take it if it resonates. It's just my personal experience that most of what you're coming across is something that just doesn't understand you and is trying to get the response as a means of poking understanding, the same way we experiment or try to understand things in our physical reality a lot of times.
I love your language. As you're speaking and you're saying there are entities that don't understand us as well. And we're humans, we personify everything, right? Very, very social creatures. We have also, all as human, experienced poking something to figure out what it is. And if you can think of the personality constructs that are so in opposite, not opposition, but so opposite and unknowing to us, it makes sense that they would maybe poke us a little bit to see what we do. And because we do throw a lot of energy out, you could see how that would be
Mhm.
interesting. And you can see how we would translate that as a parasitic interaction.
It often, when I hear other people from other practices or traditions talking about it, it is usually talked about like an energy vampire or something that's trying to feed off of your energy. It does come off as feeling very parasitic or intentional to our perspective. So,
When I've done work assisting people who have outgrown some symbiotic relationships with other entities that are very different from us,
mhm,
the first thing that surprised me when I learned how to do this, in my tradition, we call them compassionate depossessions.
mhm,
What was so surprising to me is how like nonchalant and chill it can really be.
yeah,
The first time I was in a circle where we were doing that style of healing and I was with my mentor, it was a very peaceful experience when portals were open and things crossed through and went back where they are from. There was no drama. It was very, what I would say, very peaceful.
yeah.
And I found that really surprising.
Yeah, there are many personalities out there that don't process emotion as strongly or as intensely as we do as humans, that type of personality construct. So for them, it's, you know, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice knowing you, you know. It's really our energy. Like, people get very frightened and upset and worked up, and they keep putting that energy of fighting against or into it, and as long as that's still what they're getting, it's like the connection continues, right, until you learn to chill out and back off and be like, you know what, I don't like this anymore, whatever. And then they're like, okay, whatever, bye. I'm really appreciative always of people like you who have podcasts, people who do channels, who put stuff out, who talk about things openly. For a very long time, I thought maybe I was crazy or that nobody understood. Had to go through a lot of that journey like alone and unassisted and try to figure out by myself what was happening with it. And it was a challenging, a challenging ride for a number of years.
Could you speak to anyone who's listening today, anyone whose earbuds you've ended up in, who's finding that they are traveling in their dreams. They are easily slipping in and out of their body. They are disseminating. Is that the word you used?
Yeah.
And they're freaked out. What words of wisdom from this vantage point, having developed the way you have, having the experience you have, what nuggets of wisdom would you offer them? Other than going to your YouTube page and connecting with you so they don't feel alone.
The first thing I would really recommend is as you're doing your meditation to use different forms of meditation in order to help you pinpoint and have greater control over what you're doing. A lot of what I was doing was void state meditation or the absence of thought. But you can also shift your meditations to doing grounding meditation to make sure that you're stable within your body, that you have full control over what you're doing. There are meditations that will teach you to focus energy, like first I want it in my forehead, but now I'm going to move it to my throat and I'm going to move it. So practicing having the control over that feeling over self is really helpful if you're feeling wild style with it. It does take some practice if you're out of your body and starting to move into other realms. It takes some practice to feel your way into controlling where you are. It feels a little bit like here and there and, unclear about what's happening. And it's hard for me to, okay, how do I want to say this? Because I want to be able to say that no physical harm can come to you. So a sense of calm helps. That sense of panic is only going to drive the energy wilder. But I also, having done this for a long time, I understand that physical harm is not the only kind of harm there is, and that all experience is valid. And so if you're having a frightening experience, it's in my opinion, it's just as harmful. And just know that you're not alone. What you're going through is valid. It's not a symptom of crazy. And there is a way to relax into it in order to regain a sense of balance. If we can realize that spirit is our natural state, this physical human focus point, this physical reality that we're in is a technique of experience, but our natural state is the spiritual state that you're experiencing. And it's only a question of recognizing your own belonging there to regain the stability to operate in it well. The memory of who you really are is there.
I love that. I love that idea of how no matter what state of consciousness we are in, the memory of who we are is there. That's a very powerful and very grounding affirmation that who you really are always is there.
Mm-hmm. Shifting beliefs takes time. Like, I would be lying to you if I said that there was some easy, quick, way to shift a belief structure, because it takes the mental algorithm has to change to catch up with it. It's just like your like YouTube channel or your social media feed, right? Like if
Right?
you've been clicking on things, it's going to bring you more of those things automatically. So it takes a conscious effort to say, okay, well, I don't want to see these things anymore. I'm not going to click on them. I'm going to manually search in the search bar and find something else to bring into my feed to change the algorithm. And our mental landscape works the same way. If you want to change your beliefs or change the reality that you're experiencing, it takes a conscious effort to say all of these thoughts or all of these things that I believed, I don't I don't want that anymore. It's not beneficial to me anymore. I'm going to intentionally click on something else. I'm going to type into my search bar of my mind and say, no, show me a time when that wasn't the case. Or no, I believe I'm more than just this body. So help me remember who I really am. Sometimes we have to ask for it and do that interruption to the mental algorithm in order to start recalling and bringing up those stored recollections, those soul experiences that we're hoping to reintegrate into our current experience.
And that speaks so beautifully to, we can talk about it here today, you and I in this space. The reality is that both of us have been on this path for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on this path 30 years of soul
Mm-hmm.
development. Like, I started into this path when I was 17 years old.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's it does take time. So when people are new and they're experiencing new things, like even listening to you when you were talking about moving the energy, like focusing it in, like, say your head or your forehead, you had pointed to your third eye, and then down into your throat, and then maybe into your belly. That is a meditation I used to do all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
now it's effortless to do that. I can focus energy where I want to.
So when you ask me like how do I not leave my body or how do I control it? It's like, ugh, it took me years of practice to be able to notice the feeling, oh, I'm slipping out and I'm not into that tonight. I don't want to, and be able to control the energy in that way. Because it used to, like I said, when I was a kid, willy-nilly, in and out all the time, I couldn't control it at all.
I
So,
think I can relate with what I pick up psychically, right? It took years to figure out, like, what is mine, what is not mine, how do I release what doesn't belong to me, and doing channeling work too. Like when I was channeling, especially dearly departed, it took a long time to not feel the constriction of a heart attack when someone had passed from a heart attack, and get the
mhm,
control to bring the information in without being overwhelmed by it.
yep.
So it sounds very similar.
Definitely it is. It's well worth the practice to do it, to be able to take that. I have like a little mental pin, like the kind you would pin on your shirt that says off duty.
Mhm.
That I use that I can, you know what I mean? When I pin it to myself, it's like I'm off duty right now, right? Like I need to, it's equally important to focus on, your own human experience here, to be with your family, to be present, to be enjoying this physical life that you have. And so being able to take that little imaginary badge and stick it on your forehead and go, nope, I'm off duty today, guys. We're not doing this right now. To draw some boundaries for yourself so that it's not just happening whenever.
This is beautiful. So we'll kind of, to wrap up, and you have a YouTube channel. Do you have a website too?
I don't. I have an Instagram and a YouTube channel that, I mean, I can drop the YouTube channel. People are welcome to check it out. I've got two YouTube channels. I've got one is called Vibrational You, and that's where they do tarot readings, spiritual chit chats. That's where I have spirituality, so stuff like that. And then the other channel is called Unraveling the Unexplained, and that's my brother shows me like videos of paranormal activities, spooks, hauntings, other unexplained activity, and just gets my insight as somebody who's been doing astral traveling for a long time and who operates in non-physical realms on, what I think is actually going on with certain situations. So it's kind of a fun one as well.
Oh my gosh, that is so fun. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm definitely going to have you back. I feel like we could just, like, dive in so many ways. I love comparing, and I love the way you describe things. I'm really excited, and I know everyone in the Earbud Coven will have learned so much from this conversation. Thank you.
No, I really appreciate being invited. Like I said, it matters so much to put different perspectives out there and make information available to anybody who's going through this stuff every day. More and more people with abilities are coming into this realm. More and more shamans are being born and brought in. And the more that I can say whatever I can say, share my story to help people not not have to feel so alone, not have to struggle like I did, is well worth the journey, just to reach out an energetic and helping hand to others who will follow in our footsteps.
Thank you. Yeah, this is, oh my God, we're going to talk for a while. It's going to be a long.
That's okay. It's however long it takes. And if
Oh
we
my
want
God.
to do a couple of different sessions, we can. If you want to jump on my channel, we can talk some more. Like, we can
Yeah.
have
unplug my computer and I'm like the
You're good.
most
Take your time.
unorganized person, girl. Yeah. Oh, this is so fun. Fun conversation.
I completely just lost my train of thought on that one. Okay. Okay.
Right, we'll record this blankness. It's great, Jode. Yeah, so do you want to just record tonight and make the podcast in this moment of heat and sunshine and super high energy?
Yeah, it's fine. If we're recording, we can just chat. You can take whatever pieces of it work for you.